Okay, hi everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in to the second part of our series on whether or not it's actually possible to go paperless in a digital age for business records. So hopefully you caught the previous video, and we spoke to Dawn Ross with All Task Services, and today we have the second part in our series, and we're going to be talking to Melody McClain. And she is an accountant locally here in Airdrie, and I met Melody through the Smart Start program, where she was a star alumni. And so she's agreed to talk to us today and answer some questions about the accountant's role as far as managing and tracking your business records, and whether or not it's easier to have it in a paper, hard copy format, or digital or soft copy. So, hi, Melody. Welcome.
Thanks for joining
us today. So I guess probably my first question would be, do you have any, do you do any bookkeeping work as part of your services? And if so, what do you think the percentage would be as opposed to just doing out-and-out accounting?
Mm-hmm. So we do both. We have clients that we do bookkeeping and then year-end accounting, tax returns for, and then we also have clients that they maybe do their own bookkeeping, or they have another bookkeeping service that handles that for them, and then they send us their documents kind of more at the end of the year, and we then do the year-end activities for them. I would say about half. It's about 50% of our clients that we do the bookkeeping for in-house, and of those 50%, it runs the full. Some people are bringing in their documents at the end of the year, and it's kind of an annual bookkeeping thing. Other clients are stopping by every couple of weeks, monthly for sure, and bringing us their documents, and we're more of an ongoing kind of a service for them throughout the year. So it really just depends what clients are looking for.
Oh, okay. All right. And so do you think, are you handling mostly home-based businesses, small businesses, large corporations?
Our clients are mostly small and mid-sized corporations. Is the lion's share of our clients. We do have a lot of home-based businesses as well, particularly, more during that March, April personal tax season. But throughout the year, most of our clients are. We've got a couple of clients that are larger, maybe 50, 60 employees kind of size, but most by and large, we're probably 5 to 10 employees, even mom and pop, 1, 2, 3, 4 employees kind of idea.
Right.
Yeah.
And do you find that most of the businesses that you are involved with, do they have a fairly good bookkeeping system? Do they organize the records on the whole? Do they organize the records fairly well, or is it a really a steep learning curve when they get to it?
It is really varied. A lot of the ones, I find that the ones that we handle bookkeeping for on a monthly basis tend to get pretty organized pretty quickly, because we, try and give a fair bit of feedback as far as if you could organize it like this, that would speed things up on our end. And of course that's the goal, is make the less time we spend on your file, the less we charge you. Right. So the more feedback we can kind of provide on how to get things in an organized fashion, the better it is for all of us. So right. Those clients I find tend to get organized fairly quickly. Clients even that we handle quarterly, same kind of idea. The annuals are a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest, because sometimes they've got a system that works really well for them through the year, but it's not well organized from a bookkeeping perspective. Right. Sometimes clients, they really don't have a system, and it just all goes into a box, and we sort through it. And that's okay too. But it's a real mixed bag for sure.
Okay. So the documents that do come through, I know from my own system, what happens is my bookkeeper will process everything, and while I hand the documents to my accountant, I think he more or less just processes the summary reports that come through. I'm not sure how much he actually looks at
Yep.
the supporting documents. But if you are doing a large portion of the bookkeeping as well, do you prefer to use paper copies, or are you starting to see more and more digital copies? And if so, which one's easier to use?
So the answer to that question, I would say, would very much depend on where in the process we are. If we're talking bookkeeping, I actually find paper to be more efficient ultimately from a bookkeeping perspective,
Right.
simply because you can reorganize the paperwork, right? You can resort it. You can have that bank statement and a ruler and go down line by line, and because you're needing to enter everything in a very particular fashion, and you want to make sure that you're not missing anything and that you're tying all of the numbers and all of that. Whereas if you receive a scan, sometimes that scan is not in the order that you need it to be in order to effectively enter the bookkeeping. So you end up just printing it off anyways, so that you can then reshuffle the paperwork around. If you're talking year-end process, so even within our own accounting firm, we have a very different process for, the clients that come in and do bookkeeping. We handle the bookkeeping, and then that's kind of like closed door. Okay, the bookkeeping is done. Now we're moving on to year-end. Well, in that year-end side of things, now things can be a lot more digital, a lot more electronic. And you're quite right. When a client brings in a year-end file and brings all of their bookkeeping documents, it's great to have, and it's really nice to be able to go back to if a question comes up in doing that year-end. But really, we're not going through all of that paperwork. That paperwork's been gone through by the bookkeeper. We've got the accounting, the bookkeeping file. That's what we need. Right. And so from that perspective, having all of that paper is much less necessary. And now electronic actually gets really quite nice, because you can search things, things are findable for the most part, in most even just PDFs. So you can quickly kind of jump to that information that you need from a year-end financial statement preparation kind of perspective.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. So, do you think we'll ever actually reach a point? So let's say, because it kind of seems like the trend is moving towards paperless. So do you think we'll actually ever really reach a point where we can, as long as we're organized, we can go paperless?
I think organization will really be the key there, because for me, if I'm thinking that we're really paperless, it means that we're not printing out, right? A lot of information we receive paperless. We receive emails, we receive downloads into like a Dropbox type of a format, and then we go and access it. So the client didn't physically need to bring us their paper. Right. But in a lot of cases, we're then printing it out. Yeah. In order to do the bookkeeping and organize it in a way that works for bookkeeping. So, not really. And then we may scan it back in, shred the original documents that we printed, and now we save it in a paperless format. But there's still that paper step in the middle. Yeah. Yeah. That's the piece I'm a little skeptical that we're going to do away with that anytime soon. Okay. As software improves, and as you're more able to directly link documents and have that bookkeeping function almost start to happen electronically, that'll increase, I think, the paperless aspect of bookkeeping. But I feel like in the bookkeeping side of things, I think it's going to be tough to go truly paperless. Right. I also, and I do find, however, I would say the more organized that those paperless files are, increases that likelihood. Right. Because, like I say, if you've got information coming to you kind of all a mixed bag of information in a paperless scan, it's pretty hard to organize that. Yeah. Without printing it and resorting it. Yeah. Whereas if it's already pre-organized, then possibly you don't need to print it. Maybe now you can work straight from the electronic copy. So I think organization is going to be the key to that ever happening. Right. Yeah. So, just a final question. I maybe other than organization, or perhaps something like a really common mistake that you might see
So if you could offer like one key tip for people trying to go through their year ends or organizing for next year, what do you think that they could do to maybe help that along?
I think it's client specific for sure, but I mean, it does come back to the completeness of your documents, and through the year, it's challenging at the year end to to sometimes then all of a sudden get all of your documents ready for your accountant. Right. Because sometimes that can be a really daunting task because your documents are here and there and everywhere. Yeah. And oh yeah, I got that email from, this vendor at some point in time. Oh yeah, one thing I'll say, when we talk about going paperless, we used to have, just as an example, we used to have a situation where we received a lot of our invoices were paid via checks, right? If we go back a number of years. Yeah. Checks were how people did business with one another. Right. So you received all of the checks that you received as payment from your clients, you entered them into a deposit book, you took the deposit book to the bank. There you go. There's a nice paper trail from check to deposit book to the entry on your bank statement. Now we receive a lot of our payments through e-transfer. So there's very, very little in the way of paper trail. There's now just these random e-transfers showing up in our bank accounts. Well, you take that bank statement to your accountant at the end of the year, it's virtually impossible for them to figure out who you received money from. And if that doesn't tie very nicely, so to some invoicing that's in your bookkeeping file, it can be a challenge. And that accountant is now going to come back to you, 8 or 12 months later and say, hey, you received payment of $523 on March 8th from somebody. I can't match it to anything, who give me some information on that. Right. Well, I mean, it's not impossible to find that information, but it's tough. Yeah. So
I've run into that problem myself because yes, normally I know how to process checks, but as people started doing e-transfers, it was a little strange for me. But I noticed that if I accept the e-transfer over my phone, as most people probably do, yes, I don't get a receipt. But if I waited and actually signed into my bank account to accept the e-transfer, then I noticed that there was a print option. Yes. When I was processing that transaction, so I would print it. So again, going back to paper. But
agree. So I do the exact same thing, the exact same process. So I accept them on the computer, and I print that receipt. However, I don't print it to a piece of paper. I just print it straight to a PDF. Right. And then in that PDF folder, so I save them by date, organize them by date, so I can always go back and see them. And just in the name of it, I put the amount, the date, and who it's from. Right. So now that information is really easy for me to find. Yeah. So I guess my comment is, figure out what those challenges are for you and figure out a way to deal with them on a daily basis rather than, when the transaction happens, rather than having your accountant come back to you at the end of the year and literally send you an email that's, 2 pages long with all of these bank transactions on them that are all just debit, 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 e-transfer, 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 and say to you, the client, hey, can you tell me what all these transactions are for? Yeah. Well, that's a real pain for you, the client, to have to go and try and figure that out. Yeah. Months after transactions have happened. Right. So figure out a system to record that information as it's happening so that if you do get questions on them, it's much, much easier to go back and find.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, great. That's a great tip. That's perfect. And yeah, I think that will help a lot of people. So I just want to say thank you again for taking the time to talk to me about the subject. And again, I imagine you're probably still a little busy with year-end stuff going through, but yeah, if anybody has any further questions for Melody, she's local here to Airdrie, and she can be found on her website. It's MJMcClain. Is that?
That's right. MJMcClain.ca.
Perfect. So MJMcClain.ca if you have any further accounting questions. And yeah, thank you very much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
No problem.